Hi folks, so today we're going to talk about Netbrain integration with ServiceNow, specifically Netbrain's Change Management module, which allows you to push configuration changes to your different network devices, and integration with the ServiceNow change approval process, which you can see on my screen. So this would be useful for places like the compliance queue app within Netbrain, which allows you to compare your current configuration of your devices with a template, which would be your desired configuration. So you could copy a change for a device that's missing some configuration that you desire into the change management. So we'll kind of go through that process really quickly here. So first, obviously, you would map a device that you want to roll the changes, or multiple devices for that specific change. And we'll start with that. And from there, we're going to go to network change, new network change. We're going to give it a name like change aux port and give it a description and make it as obviously as descriptive as possible. We're going to use a template. In this case, this is going to tell Netbrain to integrate with ServiceNow, which will have already been set up beforehand, and we will not cover in this video. So at this point, now I have a run book that's going to allow me to push out a network change. And it will be useful to click on each node. So the planning node, it will be used later, where you can see here we have an option for doing internal Netbrain. In this case, we're going to use an external approval, but we won't need to do anything with this node until we push the change to ServiceNow. So at that, next we will do the definition of the change itself. So we'll do config T. In this case, maybe we'll rename an interface, and we will type in the config change specifically. And at the end of the change, you need to make sure you do a write memory or save the running configuration, whatever your command is for that. So word of caution, there is no syntax or a check for the change itself. So these are things that you're going to type in, and Netbrain just going to pass through an SSH session. We can also integrate with Ansible, which we won't cover on this video. This will be passed through to your network devices that are specified here in the left pane. We will also need to do a rollback if a rollback's possible, so we can do the same thing. In this case, the change would be to just do a no in front of the description to delete that if necessary. Obviously, on this is a really simple example. So at this point, we've specified the device and the change. After we do that, we will do the next node, which will be trigger change request ticket. So this will actually integrate using API to ServiceNow to push our fields here. So whatever we type in these fields will be sent over to ServiceNow, and will populate fields within ServiceNow. And it will also create a change request and send us back a change request number. So in this case, once I run this, I fill in the fields, and then I run this change request. You can see here that I created a change request within ServiceNow. And I now have it's been sent to ServiceNow for approval, and my change definition is I cannot change it at this point. Once it's been sent to ServiceNow, it's in a pending state. I cannot change that, so it's locked down. So if I go over to my ServiceNow console, I can see the fields that are populated. The change number and everything I'm showing you right now is auto-populated within ServiceNow. So I may have to change some of these as the change requesters. So I'm going to have to put in a configuration item for ServiceNow. So that's the name of my router switch. I'm also going to need to set my assignment group. If I go down, I'm going to see all the descriptions of the changes. So once again, this is where it's useful for the approver. That will be the next person in line here. I'll obviously need to fill in the justification, the implementation plan, the risk analysis, backup plan, test plan. I can see the schedule is sent over via NetBrain, and these will be populated later. The start and end time will be populated later. And I can see conflicts within the system, and I start getting to the NetBrain section. So NetBrain automation at this point, it will fill in. I can generate a map if I click this create NetBrain map, and it will then ask me for my host name, which I've already done, and I can populate the map by clicking on this little arrow here. So very, very quick process to show the change requester and approver what the map actually looks like for this device. And I can see down here the affected CI. So all the switches and routers that are on my map will show up here as affected CIs within ServiceNow. So those are the fields that are filled in by default. At this point then, when I go through my process as the change requester, I will fill in the CI configuration item here, which I just did, and I also have to do an assignment group. So in this case, I'm going to be able to select whatever assignment group I want. This will be obviously the group that's going to have to approve it. And in this case, I have an assignment group for my device. In your case, it'll be whatever your organization's process is. So I then will request approval, and the approver will come down here and check the box that they approved it. And obviously in your case, I will, in your case, you will have two separate people doing this. I'm just going to approve it, and at this point, the action has been approved. So if I go back into NetBrain, I will see that it has been approved. And when I go into planning, there, I can see that it's been approved. Status updated via ServiceNow. So I now can roll out the benchmarks so I can start my process. So I will first do a benchmark. So I'm going to select data that I want to look at. So in this case, it's a very simple config change, but I might also want to look at my routing table before and after. That's the important part. So what I'm doing is I'm kicking off a before, a database. I'm kicking off a benchmark before and a benchmark after. So when I run this, it's going to go out and pull down my running configuration, save it for a later step. So I'm going to set my actual start time. So this is how I'm telling ServiceNow that I'm ready to kick the change off. So I'm filling in more data from a forensic standpoint to ServiceNow, so I know when the change actually started. Starting change. I'm going to run that, and at this point, it will then update ServiceNow that the change has been started. So if I go over to my ServiceNow ticket, I should see very shortly start date. So the start date has just been populated, and I can now execute the change. When the change is executed, I will push that change out and execute it. And I can also roll back. When I click that button, I'm going to see that the change has been pushed out and it is executed correctly, and I'll see the response, whether it's successful or not. Then I'll do a benchmark after. So I'll select the same data, and I want to make sure I do this benchmark after the change has actually been completed. I'll run this data, and when that is finished, I'm just going to speed through it for comparison's sake here. So I'll select benchmark after and benchmark before. So it doesn't really matter which is which, but I'll do a quick comparison of the configuration and I should see that that has changed. And at this point, when this ticket has, I'm just kind of skipping through those processes, but for ServiceNow, I'll see that I can now copy the change request in once my change is done. ServiceNow doesn't do any validation that the change within NetBrain, that part of it was finished or anything like that. So this is up to the person who's doing the change within NetBrain. So I'm going to pull live data once, select my change request, do my close code, my notes, successfully updated config or whatever it is, and what I exactly did, and then this will be populating the ticket within ServiceNow. So I'm talking via API back to ServiceNow at this point that the change has been finished, and you can see that I populated the end time automatically. And at this point, you can see that my notes populated as well. So at this point, I can look in, I can see forensic data, and I can see the history of what happened with the configuration request and the change and when it actually updated. So I hope that was helpful. There obviously are some manual steps involved in this process, but I hope that was helpful.